Hello, Miss Veronica Drake. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. And hi, my sweetie Eric. I love you.
He says, "Mwah, I love you too." And it's funny because he said it in a French accent. He's like always a jokester with me.
Oh, of course. So, before we start with that awesome topic, Veronica, is there anything you would like to share?
Well, I would like people to know that I am now teaching how to do what I do. So Mediumship 101, because everybody can do this. And I want to help produce quality, confident mediums. So Mediumship 101.
That is awesome. At veronicadrake.com.
Thank you.
Keep it simple. All right. So, Eric, we're going to talk about witchcraft, witch hunts, and the Spanish Inquisition. Not necessarily in that order, and it's probably going to be, obviously, will be multiple parts because we have so many questions from a very curious community. So, Eric, let's start with number one. Dear Eric, I would like to ask, what exactly is the definition of witchcraft, and how does it really work? Start out with a great one, man.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, Eric is again, because it's me, I think he fucks with me. He's riding around on a broom and
Oh my God.
he's just being funny. Okay. So definition of witchcraft really is anything that is out of the ordinary from religion. It took its name from anything that was kind of mainstream, and he's showing me the origin. This has always been, but it came to light when it conflicted with religious beliefs.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
So you're saying organized religion, Eric, pretty much molded it into a taboo kind of thing?
Absolutely. And he's saying that the whole purpose of that was so that it could how am I going to interpret this? So that it could control the mind,
Yeah.
so that anything that wasn't of mainstream in the same flow, in the same vein. And he's saying to also keep in mind that organized religion has morphed over the years into much more control.
Oh, okay.
So by witchcraft, and he says if we're going to get really simple with it, witchcraft is anything that wasn't considered mainstream.
Okay. Well, is there such thing as actual witchcraft? Like, are people can do spells and all that stuff?
He says absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's law of attraction.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. He says absolutely. And he says everything takes on meaning and energy by what it's named.
Oh, okay. Well, along those lines, do spells actually work, or is it more about setting an intention? It probably is one of the same. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So he says a spell is an intention.
Yeah.
And the way that it really is the most successful is the more emotionally vulnerable the human is, that's the recipient, if you will, of the
Yeah.
spell. So in other words, how do we protect ourselves? Eric's saying you build the best you can. You have strong values, you know who you are. He says that's really the antidote, if you will,
Yeah.
for
Love
spells.
yourself. Self-love.
Absolutely.
That's the best barrier against anything dark, I guess.
Yep.
Well, of course, I guess there's such thing as good witchcraft, but this like the book of spells. There's not something you have to read off. I mean, yes, there is, but it's nothing about the words. It's about the intention behind the words and the eye of Newt and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. And he's saying, honestly, if we're going to go into the recipe of a spell,
Yeah.
there was no formulation. It was happened to be okay. So, and he's making it really simple. Such and such really pissed me off or took my man or whatever it was. And I'm going to go out in the forest and pillage and I'm going to find a piece of this and a piece of that, based on the sacred understanding and meaning of, let's say, the herb, the
Oh,
insect, all of that. Because everything means something, right? So
yeah. And the pagan roots in those
absolutely.
things too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is witchcraft effective? I guess it depends on the person setting the intention and the recipient's
Yes.
vulnerability, right?
So witchcraft, he says, is energy, and it's moving energy with intention, he said, and absolutely it's effective. Now, It is also effective for the person who's receiving it if they feel that they're compromised energetically or physically. Let's say you're not feeling well, he says, you've got a cold, you've got a sinus infection, and somebody happens to go into their little book of spells, whatever that is, you're more vulnerable, he says. Your energy is more able to be compromised. So especially when you're sick, when you're not feeling well, because you just never know, he says, who's out there gonna throw witchcraft at you, he says. You just want to make sure that you're healing and protecting and cleansing your energy.
Okay, interesting. If one doesn't believe in the power of curses or spells, can they still be effective if they are directed at them?
Erik said everything is about a belief system. Everything is about the mind. So if you're walking around thinking you're untouchable, then essentially you've got boundaries around you. Now, he says, let's be very clear about this. If you're walking around thinking you're untouchable in an arrogant, egotistical kind of way,
Oh, yeah.
that's not going to work, because the energy is really, it looks to be high vibration, but ego energy is very low vibration.
So it's energy matching the spell.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely.
mm.
The power, he says, it's also the power of it is subjective. If, again, going to belief systems, if you believe that somebody put a curse or a spell on you, he says you're more apt to walk in that belief system of, oh my God, look at this. And honestly, he says, you're always going to find evidence for what you believe.
Well, that's true.
Like attracts like.
Absolutely. So how dangerous can black magic be? I mean, can we really cast spells to actually make someone die, for example?
Well, he says you can't necessarily make someone die. That is contract. So
Yeah.
any human cannot interfere with a contract, he says. So
Okay.
that's not going to happen. What you can do is make somebody very sickly, and sickly in a very normal kind of way, right? He's very clear to say you can't inflict MS on somebody, or you
Yeah.
can't, like,
Or cover them with warts.
right, not that kind of thing. It's more of a mental deterioration.
I gotcha.
So a belief system.
And I'm sure if somebody has addiction problems, they're easier targets too, huh?
Absolutely low vibrational energy. Now, the curse is not going to make someone have an addiction problem, but it'll
Oh, yeah.
exacerbate the addiction problem because they're already vulnerable.
Do negative entities that are associated with the energy of a vulnerable person, do they work with the curses and spells cast on that person in some
Yes.
way? If so, how?
He says, think of it like this. They're in unison. They're at the same frequency. They're vibrating at the same. And so naturally they want to gobble up more and more and more energy to feed them.
Okay. Well, what about good witchcraft? There can be good witchcraft, right?
Yeah, he says, absolutely. He says, look at naturopaths. Look at the
Oh,
naturopath
yeah.
doctor. Look at what they do, he says, with herbs and, the earth, all of that. He says, that's absolutely. And he says, honestly, that has more weight, more reality, more existence, if you will, than the other side.
Yeah. My 14-year-old granddaughter, my eldest granddaughter, Arlene, is so fascinated. I always take her to these places where she can get like crystals and book of spells, and she's just fascinated by that. Why is that with her?
I think especially her generation, and Erik is agreeing with this, that generation specifically, they come in crystal clear, open. They came in looking for different, right? They
Yeah.
knew they weren't going to incarnate into the same old world.
Yeah.
So they naturally will gravitate. And I would say he's showing me a handful of that generation, but it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Their minds are more malleable, more open to it, he says.
Okay. That's good. What are the easiest steps for doing witchcraft?
He says that you want to
Witchcraft for dummies. Sorry, I had to say that.
you want to get a good teacher. You want to get, whether that teacher, he says, is a book.
Yeah.
You want to learn about the craft. You want to learn about what you're doing, right? He's also referring to Wiccan. If you believe in Wiccan, even if you don't believe in it, go read the philosophy of Wiccan. It's about getting close to nature, close to the earth. He says that would be a good place to start. And also intention. You know, he's saying if you're a shitty person and you're going after a witchcraft book, he goes, no, don't do it. Like, that's going to produce, you're not going to want that.
Why? What could happen?
Because what you're going to put out comes back.
Ooh. I was going to ask, say somebody is just is mean and just wants to cast a horrible spell to make their friend, or an enemy, sick.
Yeah.
What is the danger to the person practicing that witchcraft?
He shows me a boomerang. It's like it goes out and it comes back. Now, it might not be in the moment, but it will always come back because you attract to you what you are.
Wow.
So be careful, he says.
Yeah, absolutely. Does one really have to follow such steps necessary to perform a cast or spell, or just thoughts will work? You know, thoughts are scalar energy, and I think scalar energy will carry that spell or whatever to the person, right?
Absolutely. Erik says, let's sit down and let's look at this. If you want to stand over a cauldron and you want to do this, he says, and you want to, have at it, he says.
Yeah.
However, what he's showing us is how he lives now. Everything is thought. So if you want to go and you want to read the spell, okay, I need an orange rind and I need, 3 ants and I need, whatever the spell is, bring it here, put it out, project it in your mind's eye. You're creating it.
Right. So you technically don't have to add all those ingredients.
No, he says people need the physical, tangible, because guess what? We live in a world that's right here, tangible, touchable, 3D. Gotta have this in my hand. He says that's not necessary.
Yeah, it's all about the thought, and it's physics, just like I've said many times before. Thought creates reality because it does something called collapsing the Schrodinger wave equation, which changes light waves into photons, light particles. And then that thought, the instructions from that thought will rearrange those photons to create a different reality. So anyway.
He says, Mom, you light up when you talk about that.
I love physics. I didn't when I was in high school, but all right. Does one really have to follow? Okay, we did that. Is it risky doing witchcraft? We did say, explain some of that, but any other consequences you want to enumerate, Erik?
Well, you want to always protect yourself, and you want to always make sure there's never a reason, he says, to do negative witchcraft. There's never a reason for that. He says you can look at any situation that you might want to put a spell on someone and you can reframe it, he says, because you don't want to put a spell to have them fall off the curb and twist their ankle. He says, however, you can put a spell out there that they be given the opportunity in their life in a loving way to slow down. Okay. He said, so it's really about how you frame it and how you put it out in the universe.
Okay. Interesting. This is interesting. Does witchcraft need spirit beings to help with casting the spell?
Well, we are spirit beings, Erik says.
Yeah.
We are.
Need things in your dimension, beings from your dimension, Erik?
Yep. And it doesn't hurt to have it doesn't hurt, he says, to have carrier pigeons.
Oh my God.
He's calling them carrier pigeons.
Okay.
So you can have the guides. If you want to call your guides in, you send them out and, have them deliver the message. But this kid, call them carrier pigeons.
Oh my God. That is so Erik. I said, how does one know if they are cursed by black magic?
Oh, that's a great question.
He
said. It's a fine line, he says, because we live in a world filled with victims and filled with low vibration.
Yeah.
So he says, this is a very serious, very important question, he says, because he doesn't want to feed anybody false information and let them run with it. So what he means by that is, if you're down on your luck, versus I have black magic or I have a spell on me, he says there is a fine line, there is a discernible difference. If you're down on your luck, you will see glimpses. You will, okay, look, I see that, or I can see that, or this. If you in fact have a black dark spell on you, you might equate it to depression. You might equate it to, I can't see the light. There's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's very possible. He says, first, you must rule out any psychosis, any psychology.
Play
into that.
Well said. That's a really good point. Is there a way, we already talked a little bit about this, to protect ourselves from black magic? Being the best version of yourself, having a high vibration, anything else?
It really is important. When we were in the midst of COVID, and he and I just were talking about this, we came in and we washed our hands all the time, right? We were washing our hands because we didn't want the germs. And so Erik says, just be obsessed with cleansing your energy.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like ritualistic, like, he says, just in your mind's eye, cleanse your energy, and do it 2, 3, 4 times a day. You don't just wash your hands once a day, he says. Make sure you're cleansing your energy.
Well, I like one technique that to imagine, and of course there's so many techniques, the sifters that archaeologists use. Imagine one of those and just run it through your body to collect all the negative energy, and then take your feet out and then take all that imaginary whatever and throw it into Mother Earth, because Earth recycles that. It's pretty easy. Of course, there's probably easier things like energy clean.
Well, he gave me one because I love the beach. I love the ocean. And he says, just imagine you're standing on the shore and you've got this tide that comes in, and it's going to suck out everything from the bottom of your feet, and it's going to roll it back out into Mama Earth. And
I love that.
Go through this process. He says you can even put your hands in your mind's eye in the tide. He says but he says always remember to end it with, please recycle it into love.
Oh,
because you don't just want that floating out there.
No. And even in a shower, you can imagine all the blackness.
So many ways. He said the idea here is to be creative.
Right. Will there be karma for those who intend to harm others using witchcraft and black magic?
Always. He says karma's a thing. Get your shit together. Karma's a thing, he says.
Right. Okay.
Yep. As it should be.
Yeah. If the victim did not have any soul contracts getting cursed by black magic, then what will the consequences be for perpetrator and victim?
So Erik says very quickly, no one ever writes curses in a contract.
No.
Okay. Curses come from humanity, because soul didn't start a curse, right? Curses come from humanity, he says, and based on your humanness and your free will, you could call certain energies in your life that might not be above board and in alignment, and therefore you may have the curse. It may put the curse. Hey, he says, remember this. This is true, Erik. Remember your monthly mom? That's a curse.
A long time ago. Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, Lord of mercy.
He's on fire.
I know. Are there evil witches on the earth?
Yeah, he says. Of course there are.
Well, what's their purpose?
Balance, recalibration. Because we live in the dimension of duality, he says. Y'all live in the dimension of duality. It has to be. You have to know evil to know good. He says, think of the Glenda the Good Witch.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a true thing. Yeah, a house will fall on you.
Wow. All right. What form of element works faster for witchcraft?
Fire.
Oh, really? Why? Is it because we can focus our thoughts better around a fire?
Fire just is like it's all powerful. It's all knowing. It is. He says it's a very strong force. All the elements can give life or take life.
Yeah.
Fire is in the blink of an eye, he says.
Yeah, that's true.
Send your-
Maybe a
send-
session about fire. Cool. Okay. What herbs are more effective for spells?
He says he's leaning towards mushrooms right now.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not an herb, but he's leaning towards mushrooms.
Okay.
Dandelions
Okay.
can be used in
Does
spells.
it just help strengthen your intent when
Mhm.
you're performing?
Well, he says, get to know metaphysically the herbs, understand their principles, understand what they are. This isn't something like you just open it up and you go, okay, one dandelion, one piece of sage, one.
Yeah.
He said, if you want to do this and you want to do it right in a healthy, productive way to help heal the world, you need to know what the hell you're doing. He says, go learn about the herbs.
It's like people are given the placebo antibiotic. All of a sudden, hey, I'm better.
Yep.
You know, it's
That's
the
exactly what he
thought.
said.
Yeah, okay. Do body fluids on spells speed up the spell process? Let me
No.
whip it out and pee.
No, he says no. That's a mind thing. He says absolutely not.
Or blood. I used to have one patient who said she was a witch and she really did look like one. Long black hair and always wore black. And she always, when I had her lab work, she would always want to keep her blood to use for spells.
He says that's not necessary. He says.
Hey, yeah. Is being a witch genetic?
Oh, that's a great question. He says you can come from a lineage of witches. Absolutely. He says instead of witches, replace the word for gypsies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. How do negative entities even enter my room and space? Well, I understood they come from little tears in the energy of your home, your body, etc. But what else do you want to add to that, Eric?
He says, just imagine you know what he showed me? He just showed me one of those remember those little coin purses? You squeeze it in your hand and the top opens and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like a rubber. He showed me that. It's like when you get squeezed, a
Oh,
little opening comes in, just like that coin purse.
interesting.
And the energy comes in, and that's how it gets in there. And then boom, the squeeze goes off because you whoa, you think everything's all right. The opening closes, and then all of a sudden you're stuck with that energy in you.
Okay. All right. So look, we're going to stop just for this is part 1, and then I will restart the recording for part 2. So you guys check out veronicadrake.com. Be sure you subscribe to the Channeling Erik YouTube channel and the Atlanta Scalar channel, and visit veronicadrake.com. All right, stopping recording. Bye. I love you, Erik.